Hello everyone, and welcome. Today I want to show off a relatively new game that's in early access called Aurora Defense. I've really been enjoying this one so far. It's a roguelike deck building wave defense type of game. There's 3 starting decks you can run. The main downside with this game right now is that with it being in early access, there's not a ton of card variety yet. There's enough variety where you can make several different builds, and then maybe with some of the meta progression stuff, the decks will feel more unique. I haven't messed around with the other 2 decks very much yet. I've mostly just been playing full Earth and trying to get a build figured out for it. In terms of like how strong the meta progression is, at least for the Earth deck, I didn't really notice it too much. It's stuff that does help, but it's not too overwhelming. And then for now I've unlocked up to Ascension 3. I haven't tried 4 yet, so I'm not going to do that on recording. But in the future I might clear up to Ascension 9 and do some builds for that. Anyways, with that being said, I think the game is worth it in its current state if you enjoy this type of thing. Otherwise, maybe wait until there's more card variety. But I've definitely felt like I've gotten my money's worth out of it so far, and I don't feel bored with it yet, even after about 10 hours of playing. So with that being said, let's jump into the run now. So here, I'm not really too happy with the starting cards, and that's something I don't really like as much about this game. With it being a deck builder, your hand is random at the start. And, like, I want to get a turtle down, but I just didn't draw it, which is the problem. But it's really not going to be an issue. I'll just put 2 of these down, and then your, like, base has an attack on its own. It can solo the first wave easily enough. So the Earth deck is kind of all about turtling, both figuratively and literally. If you can make it through early stages, then it scales up extremely powerfully. And it also uses actual turtles, which is why I say it's an actual turtle build, or a turtle deck. So with it being a deck builder, something you want to keep in mind is how many total cards you're picking up during a run. You don't want to be just throwing random stuff into your deck. That if you do that, it'll be much harder to cycle through cards you actually want. It's much better to have a low deck count that you can constantly cycle through than having just a bunch of stuff in your deck. I'm going to try and get up to 5 megaliths total during this run, which are the building that summon my main unit, and probably the only unit that I'll be using throughout the run. I may put down a Firebird nest at some point, depending on how the early game goes, but past this first area, I won't be using anything other than turtles. So the way that the deck and the turtles is able to scale up over the run is through the use of these buildings that I've been putting down. The Moonstones give attack every round, and then the Sunstones give damage every round to all turtles. I'm not really too thrilled about... The problem with this is that I don't really know what is considered a rare card, and I haven't really figured out a way to tell what's a rare card and what's not. The horn is actually pretty decent, so that's probably what I'll take. Especially just... the horn is very good if you ever need a way to get through the early game a lot easier. Especially with the type of setup that I'm going for, that is kind of turtling. Now, lightning shields might be something I pick up later in the run, but I'm not going to grab them for now. One thing that's both a positive and a negative about this game right now is that, with it being in early access, there's not a huge pool of available cards So it's good in the sense that it's pretty consistent to get to a specific build if you want a specific build. You can still get screwed over by not getting the certain cards you want early on, but generally it's not that difficult to get a like perfect deck set up. So one thing I definitely do want to pick up is these wishing cards. You add a temporary sunstone or moonstone to your hand, and its crystal cost becomes 0. Just already, this is 1 mana cost cheaper than placing them normally. And then we'll also have cards, or we'll have relics, I mean, that can interact with either making this cost lower or helping this in other ways. So eventually you can get to a point where this is free or close to free, and then what you're putting down is also free. So it ends up being cheaper in the long run than putting down the actual sunstone and moonstones, if you can get it set up properly. I am going to get rid of the Ruins Workshop early on. I have never really used those too much. I haven't really cared the times that I did try using them. I'd much rather just use towers instead for the early game. And then by the time the turtles are able to scale more, I don't really need any other units or even towers. So when you level up your buildings, the first level is usually just going to have common upgrades that are the same. So here I'll take range. And then once you start getting to the higher levels, there will be higher tier upgrades, and they'll also be a little bit more random. There's really not a lot of choices in the pool for upgrades as well. But there are some things that you can randomly get or not get. I'm going to try and be going up to 5 of the megaliths, so if I see them and there's nothing else that's good to take, that's pretty much what I'm working towards. Once I get to 5, I don't want to keep adding more of them into the deck, but before 5, I want to keep getting more of them, because leveling them up is going to be quite useful, especially early on. And then I'm just going to be stacking as much HP as possible on them. That way the turtles and the buildings here can kind of stall for the towers to be able to do damage, and even my base to be able to do damage, now that the base has full map attack range. I don't really care about this at all, honestly. Usually by the time you get to any bosses, you can just tank them pretty easily, and we'll have a way of scaling damage, so we don't really need to worry about their HP at all. Paralyze is something I could build into with the electric towers. The electric towers paralyze, which slows enemies, but I would much rather just pick up the extra HP for the turtles. Mirror is also something I might consider picking up later, but I'm not going to pick it up quite yet. I can get my 5th megalith here, or I also want to build up to maybe like 3 or 4 bombard towers. But I'll prioritize the turtle first. I actually haven't gotten a turn where I can put down a bombard tower yet to talk about those, but the bombard towers are extremely good. So here you can see that now that the building is kind of higher leveled, I can start seeing some epic or other rarities of upgrades. This is the one I really want to get. Summoned units deal damage equal to 1% of their max HP to attackers. So we're stacking their HP very high, and then now anything that attacks it will take damage as well, which will help with clearing out the enemies a lot more efficiently. One of the other nice things about these turtles is that they do attack in an AoE already. So they do some area damage, even though I only have one down, it can clear pretty effectively. And then especially once you put the thorns on top of that, they can start clearing on their own. Healing Totem is going to be another thing that I want to throw into this build. Again, I don't know if I'll throw them down during Area 1, but they will get thrown down at some point. Now this event is something you have to watch out for. This event doesn't tell you this, but if you leave without taking either of these, he will steal a card from your deck. So I would rather take a random card and just have to remove it. Which Rune's Totem is something I can maybe use anyways. But yeah, I would rather take a random card and remove it than have one of my cards stolen. Okay, and now, usually once you get a building to its max rank, you'll have sort of a unique upgrade that will be fixed. So here I can get either a lightning turtle that gets more health and has basically another source of thorns damage, or I can get flame turtles, which has a flame attack, it deals more damage, and then it will deal a stacking burn damage as well. For now, I'm going to pick up the lightning turtle. I think it's just much better to take for Area 1. Mostly what the goal of this area is just to make sure the turtle can actually survive through the waves. Once the stacking from the towers on them gets going, they'll have so much HP that they won't need as many of the bonuses from stuff like this, but for now, just making sure they survive is the main goal. This one's actually a little bit of a difficult choice, but I think taking the extra card selection is going to be a lot more worth it, especially since I'm seeing it so early on. I think I will actually pick up an extra magic crystal or two. The magic crystals are basically just free income. So one thing I should mention is that you have an income of crystals, and then any crystals you don't spend at the end of a turn are actually saved. So you can actually stock up crystals. So there's basically never a case where drawing something like a magic crystal is bad. Even if you don't use the crystal that turn, you can save it for next turn. Unless you're like putting so many of them in your deck that you don't have any other cards that you want to play. That's the point of where it becomes bad. But otherwise, it's a good idea to take them. So I think I will get a healing totem down. And then I'll boost the range of this just... Oh, I should have only taken one. I usually only put one in range for towers, but it shouldn't be too big of a deal. Usually with Earth, this is around the point of the run where I might lose, if I'm going to lose. I think it's still a couple more rounds left until that point, but we're getting close to it. So I do want to take some extra, like, preventative measures. I don't care about this event too much, personally. I have no crystals right now anyways, so it's not going to do anything. I'm going to click it anyways. I don't remember if that one has any consequence for just leaving it, so I might as well click it. But I don't really find gold to be that useful, and I feel like you get enough of it that you always have enough, regardless of if you have anything that provides additional gold or not. That might be something that changes depending on what kind of build you're going for, too. Like, with this starting deck, most of what I need is in the starting deck itself, so I don't really care about buying or selecting cards as much as a different build might. Alright, so now we got a couple of the bombardment towers down. These things are amazing, but we will go back to them in a little bit. So one thing that is kind of the bane of this run is these bird-looking enemies here. They will break armor extremely quickly. Even if you have like 10 to 20 armor stacked up, or defense I should call it, even if you have defense stacked up, a bunch of it, they will just completely remove that defense. So it is something that you get passively as you level the deck, and it is something you can get from some of the cards, but it is not something I would say you want to rely on too heavily. So here we have two pretty interesting options to run with the build. Echo Wall triggers the start of turn effects for 2 other buildings at the start of each turn, and then Resonance kind of does the same thing. Echo Wall is actually less efficient than just having more Sunstones and Moonstones down, both in terms of cost it's the same, but in terms of how much space you're using, this takes up 4 spots instead of 1. So it could be interesting if maybe, I don't know what you would pair with it to make it work better, but it would work really well in some other builds too. But for this one, I want to take Resonance. Especially because there are certain relics which can make spell cards cheaper. We can get that for pretty cheap. I'm probably going to pick up an extra healing totem here. I think having like 2 or 3 in the deck is pretty good. And then, what do we want to get rid of? I think it should be fine to get rid of the Firebirds. The Firebirds can be a pretty nice buffer if you just like place them in front of the turtles. They can kind of soak up some of the hits that the armor shredding enemies would deal to them, which I think is one way you could build around that negativity of the turtles. I wouldn't even say they really rely on their defense, though. Defense is more of something that just really helps you get through some of the early waves. If you can make it through the first area and get a decent amount of these scaling buildings down, then you're probably fine for most of the run, if not the rest of the run after that point. That's just kind of how it feels like this build works. None of these options are really that good. If you did want to go for like the Firebirds to use as a buffer for the turtles, Dragonwing is a really good relic for that. I'll pick up Pickaxe, I guess, because the lightning towers that I'll be putting down do have a paralyze effect, which might actually lock me in for... At some point, I either start focusing entirely on lightning towers or flame towers, and then get rid of the other one. Since I have an upgrade for the lightning tower, I'm probably just going to pick up a couple extra of those as well. So now we could go for another turtle, or we could go for the resonance. Really, I think one turtle can solo easy enough in this first area, so I would rather take the resonance. As long as you have the turtle fully upgraded, at least. I think that's kind of a big threshold point of if you will just lose the run too early on, or if you'll have more of a chance to scale or not, is just whether you get the turtle down fast enough, or you get some stuff like bombardment towers set up. But I think the main one is make sure you get the turtle upgraded fast enough, because the final upgrade for it is pretty big, and then also the base HP that you get along the way. So I'll pick up one more lightning tower. I'm gonna stop at 3 of those, and then I'll probably pick up maybe 3 to 4 bombardment towers as well at some point. So kind of the way I've built this first area is pretty specific as well. I use these as basically like buffers as well. They can take some damage before the turtles, and then it doesn't actually matter if these die or not. The way that these work is that they add a stacking buff to your turtle's HP or attack at the start of each turn, and they always get repaired before the start of each turn. So them being dead doesn't actually matter at all. You could even, like, sell these, and the attack buff would still be active. It only matters that they always activate at the start of the turn. It also doesn't matter, like, it applies retroactively, so, like, if you put a turtle down later, you don't get punished for it. Rather than, like, it only scaling to turtles that are placed down. It's basically just like a shared buff that gets applied after your other turtle stats, or something like that. So we'll get another healing totem, and then we'll just throw a resonance. I honestly don't know if I really care too much about even leveling up a second turtle. Once we get to this boss fight, the board is going to get entirely cleared, which is one reason why I kind of specified that even if these buildings disappear, their effect is still active. So that is something that you might be like kind of scared about if you were looking at the build otherwise. It's like, oh, I'm playing a stacking build, but then the board wiped and all my stacking stuff is gone. Luckily, the buffs stay. That's not always the case for other buffs. Like, there's a buff for Firebirds where they can spawn additional ones. Those, unfortunately, don't carry over. Bird Nest is a very silly... It's a very silly relic. If you get certain things down to where you can stack up a bunch of extra crystals, I've had really insane runs. The thing about this is that it does not have a trigger limit. So every time you empty your hand, you get another card, and then you spend that card, and then you get another one, and it can go on forever, as long as you have the income for it. So at some point I might see if I can set up like an infinite cycle of where I'm always spending more than I'm using with this. I think you could probably do it with like a spell deck. There's a relic that makes spells cheaper, and then you could just have low enough cost spells that you don't end up spending more crystals than you make. Phoenix Altar is something I have thrown in with this build occasionally, but I don't think it really needs it, and it would not be good with how the build is set up right now. The Phoenix Altar needs things to die before it creates a minion, so it's a lot better in builds where you're just spamming a lot of weaker units, which this build will have the capability of doing at some point, if I find the right card for it. So another reason why in the first area I said I'd like to build in this specific way, where I kind of place everything at the bottom, it also just makes things a lot easier with the setting up the towers. The towers are a pretty good source of damage to get through the first stage. This event will just make it where in your next hand, you'll draw 2 additional cards from your deck. It doesn't give you, like, different cards or anything. I don't know if there's a downside to not taking it. I've never not taken it, because it's pretty much purely an upside. So yeah, by building down here like this, everything will kind of drag to the bottom. They'll all stack up, which makes the AoE from the Flame Tower more effective, the AoE from the Tortoises more effective, and then it just makes it easier to stack all the towers down at the bottom. Do I guess I should probably play it safe and get another. I don't think I need to put a 4th healing totem down, but I will put one more. If I feel like I'm doing well enough, which I think I am right now, we'll see how this wave goes. I like to store up some extra crystals before I go to the next stage after the boss fight. Yeah, we're really solid here. I don't even think the weaker turtle died, and then my my higher HP one was pretty much untouched at the end of the round, or it had gotten healed back, possibly. Alright, so checking again, I'm at my megalith count. I don't want to go past 5 because I don't want to see too many of these. I still need to be seeing like other moonstones and stuff to throw down, but I want to be seeing them pretty consistently is the thing. I might get rid of the wisdom cards at some point. For now, I'll get rid of the flame tower, and then do I feel like I need to pick up a 3rd lightning tower? Probably not, actually. Here, I probably just want attack interval. I mostly want this... We're probably not going to get it, but if I could get this to max level, it would be pretty helpful for taking out the boss. If you get this to max level, you can make it where the lightning tower also applies a burn effect, and then the burn effect stacks the more times you hit an enemy, so it's really good against boss units. We're probably going to have an extremely slow boss kill here, because we don't really have high damage from the turtles. They just last a long time, especially due to the fact that they're... Not only do they have really high HP pool, they're also getting healed constantly. So there's basically no chance of me dying here, but it's also going to be a very long boss fight. The rest of the boss fights after this area will not look like this, so you don't have to worry about taking forever on boss fights after the first area. Like I mentioned before, the main goal for here is just to get a turtle as tanky as possible through all the upgrades, and then get the lightning upgrade for it so it can also deal good AoE damage as stuff is attacking it, and then getting down as many of the stacking buildings as possible. So this is basically just one free income here. Magic crystals are free to play, and then give you 1 crystal. So it's basically like having income for all intensive purposes. But I've noticed that this negatively works with certain relics, and it can make it cost mana, even though it's not supposed to. Actually, that might not be this one. There is a relic that can make this one cost, but it's not the interaction that I'm thinking of. There are some buggy interactions right now where something should have 0 cost, but the way that it's interacting with a specific relic isn't really what I would consider working properly. I think I will take a Wizard's Tome for this, even though Crystal Potion is really good as well. There's a lot I can do with lower cost spell cards. One of those things will be having a pretty cheap source of channeling if I want to take that. Resonance will also be cheaper. But this is something that is very, very important to pick up. I have not really even tried to run the build without this once I started running it. What the? I do not think you're supposed to still be there, but that's fine. It's not a big deal. So, as I said before, when you beat a boss, there's 3 areas total, and then every time you beat a boss, the board will fully clear. I don't think this turtle's supposed to be here, but it somehow ended up here. So that is part of the reason why I said before that if I can stock up on additional crystals before killing the boss fight, then I want to do that. If you happen to get like a hand that has no minion summons, for example, you can select any amount of cards to discard and redraw. And that's only 2 crystal cost, no matter how many you select. The cost doesn't scale with how many you click. It's just how many you get back scales with how many you discard. So if you discard the full hand, you get your full hand back. If you discard only 1, you get only 1 back, and so forth. So it's always nice to just have a little bit of a crystal buffer. That way, not only you can get your stuff down very quickly, and then also you can reroll if you need to. So this time I'm going to be building in a different formation for the 2nd and 3rd areas. I'm going to be building not quite exactly on the front line. I leave 2 spaces, and then I put this back here. And then I also want to... I think I'll probably go ahead and do it now, even. I want to get 2 and even 3 turtles down. I could probably be fine with 2, but having 3 is a little bit safer. Since the turtles have a lot of scaling now from the buildings, having multiple of them down is a pretty big benefit compared to having 1 down. I still want to fully focus on maxing 1 once I get a couple of them down, but the problem with building the way I do in Stage 1 in the later areas, it's more so probably with this build in particular, because it has so few total units, is that if too many units get down at once, and they get like a full surround on one of my turtles, they can start bypassing the turtle completely and go straight for the statue. I've had some really unfortunate runs where I have lost that way. So now I like to play things safe and just get multiple turtles down from the start. That way I don't have to worry about that type of thing. So now, the new building that we got is the Mirror Crystal. I'll go back to that in just a second. One thing I am going to pick up now, I would probably pick this up at some point later in the run anyways, but having it with the Wizard's Tome in particular makes it just a free card. And then this will give shield equal to half of the unit's HP. And since the turtles have really high stacking HP, the shields are going to be very efficient. Okay, so this other building that is very important is going to be the Mirror Crystal. It periodically summons a mirror version of one of my units. Let me check something. I only have 2 bombards. I haven't actually been needing to use them as much as I usually do. Let me go through this again, and then I'll go back to explaining the Mirror Crystal. So here again, the Wisdom cards are basically free now. Or not basically, they are free. So I would maybe remove them at some point, but I'm going to keep them. I would remove them if I didn't get some kind of cost reduction to them, is what I meant to say there. And then the Wishing will also be less cost now, so we can get Sunstones and Moonstones down for extremely cheap if we can get some more of these back into the deck. I don't actually I wish you could close out of this. It's my fault. You can view the deck before selecting this, but I didn't do that. I don't think I'm gonna worry about the Ruins Totem. The Ruins Totem is a way that you can make the Lightning Turtles stronger, and then if you're stacking up Lightning Towers, you can make those stronger as well. But I don't think we're going to need it. I was always running the Lightning Turtles when, like, all the way through all 3 rounds when I first started testing the build. But unfortunately, I think the Fire Turtles end up being a lot better after the first area. Otherwise, the main thing is just that, like, you won't lose the run, but I had some boss fights that took so long. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if there was, like, a 5-minute boss battle somewhere in there. The turtles can't die because of the healing and their high HP. The boss can never out-damage the healing, but the turtles also do not deal boss DPS if you just have full lightning turtles. I don't think I need to worry too much about having a third healing totem or anything. Mostly I want to get more wishes, but I don't think I have anything I can really discard here either, or remove from the deck, I mean. It's kind of unfortunate, but also probably a good thing at the same time, that your board does clear at the start of every round, or after every boss fight is what I mean. Otherwise, you could fully upgrade a summoner thing or two, and then remove it entirely from your deck, and just play a ton of spell cards or something. It'd probably be a lot easier to make infinites with the way that some of the spell cards work, if you could just remove your summoner cards after you didn't need them anymore. I'm still probably going to go with full HP on the initial turtle, even though I probably don't need to in this area, now that they have some of their scaling from the Sunstones. So I mentioned this before, but you can see it if you just check one of your Sunstones or Moonstones. I'll show that in a second. I feel like this build could probably handle the extra enemy attack from this, but I don't feel like 1 income is really worth it for that. Honestly, all these choices don't really matter. It's very rare that I discard. I won't be getting medium units, the turtles are large. Okay, so I realized I never got back to explaining it. Explaining things in roguelikes is always... it's always a lot more difficult than certain other games, because you constantly have random things popping up to either, like, I have to stop to consider them, or then I have to explain something else. So, 1 second, I swear I will get back to that crystal after this. So now we can either add a copy of the most duplicated cards to your deck. I don't remember what if there's a downside to this. My most duplicated card is the Megalith. I somewhat feel like this is going to take away a card. I'll pick it just for the educational value, I guess. Okay, so that one just doesn't have a downside. Some events have a downside if you leave them, and some don't. The game also doesn't really tell you if there's a downside or not, from what I could see. So I kind of mentioned this before, I believe, that defense is something that is not really too worth it, in my opinion. There are ways you could probably build around it to where you could run defense, but there are certain enemies that break through defense extremely quickly. So even if you're able to get a certain build set up that has a ton of defense, it will drop really quickly against those enemies. Which I'm sure there's ways you could build like with other units in front of the turtles to get around that. But I kind of found this build first, and it's been what's working, so there's not really a whole lot of reason to change it. Let's definitely get a healing totem down here. So I can't remember if I talked about this yet or not. I've done multiple runs trying to get like both decent commentary, and then I also failed a couple of runs really early on. So it's hard to remember, especially since I'm doing all the commentary recording live, and I'm doing it consecutively. So when I do multiple takes, it's always difficult to remember what I have said yet and what I haven't. And now I just completely lost my train of thought, too, with what I was going to explain there. If it's something important, I'll just edit in post a message in text over that, which is probably what I'll have to do in a couple places in this video, but that's no big deal. I don't really care about gold that much, so I'm pretty sure this gives you a relic. Each one of shield blocks an extra damage. That's fine. I guess it just basically doubles any shield you put on, which is okay since we do have the lightning shield. Do I care about attack radius too much? I probably don't. I'd rather just them to have the HP right now. The HP is going to be a bit wasted if it doesn't get thorns, but if it does get thorns, then that additional HP boost does help out, I guess. Actually, honestly, with how high their HP pool is from the stacks, it'd probably just be better to get the attack range there. So I don't think I really got around to talking about it, but these bombardment towers are extremely good, especially when there's just like one or a few elite enemies or boss enemies left. Not only does the bombardment tower itself have a chance to stun, it also throws turtles, which enemies will attack. So it'll distract them. It'll distract them very effectively. And that's the reason why I've been throwing them down separately instead of upgrading them. I just want as many of those turtles out as possible to distract the enemy. So we're not going to get thorns on this turtle, which is unfortunate, but I don't think it's anything that's going to be a run ender. Probably what I should do instead of spreading these out the way I have them here is I should probably move this one up one and this one down one. That way I can hit all three of them with the lightning shield. That's something I've not really thought about, and I haven't really had the need to optimize, but I might need to do that in higher ascensions. So it's something just you might as well do. You could also have 4 turtles down on this row, if you just moved everything, or if you move this one down one. But I'm not going to get 4 turtles fully upgraded by the end of anything, so I don't really mind having them a little bit more spread out. Beer is a really nice card with certain builds if you have a lot of duplicates. Torch is going to be really good as well, since I will be getting fire turtles soon instead of lightning turtles. But I don't think it's actually needed. Like I said, damage is never the problem if you're getting the turtles stacked up. It's just being able to get everything put down and stacked. So I think at this point, or even just overall, maybe if it was like really early in the run, I would consider taking the torch. But Blueprint is just going to help me get more buildings down, which is going to equal more stats for the turtles. Actually, I maybe should not have taken that. Okay, so here's a perfect example. I think I mentioned this earlier with relics. There are some bugs or unintended consequences of things with this being early access. So I'm pretty sure Blueprint is an example of this. The first building card played each turn costs -2 crystals, and then this Moonstone is one I got for free, or for cheaper through wishing. Its crystal cost is supposed to be 0, no matter what. But I'm pretty sure what happens is, now if I put like this Bombard down, oops, they forgot to make an exception for this temporary version of the card. So now it just takes it adds the +2 crystal back or +2 crystal cost back that it would normally have, instead of keeping it at 0. Okay, so once again, I will try to explain how the mirror crystal works. This will just automatically summon additional copies of whatever units you have available on your summoners. So, like, here we have the turtle summoners. They will spawn additional copies of the turtles. The mirror units will take 50% extra damage and deal 50% less damage, but we're able to have significantly more of them out this way. So I think it's every, like, 12 seconds it summons a mirror unit, which sounds like a long time, but when you're playing the game sped up, it doesn't really take that long. So there I need to make sure, if I'm using the wishing, then I need to make sure I play that right away, and play whatever it gives me, the Sunstone or Moonstone. That way I don't run into the issue of Blueprint. But if I ever get multiple of wishing in the same turn, then I have to start paying for them again. Which is kind of annoying, but it's something that should probably be easily fixable. Okay, so yeah, Mirror Crystal is every 12 seconds. It summons a mirror from any of your available buildings. And now this is why I do not use other summons with this build. Sometimes I'll throw them in early on if I'm really worried about the early game, but once you have these mirrors, it's much better for the mirrors to be duplicating turtles than some random weak unit. Even though the mirrors have drastically reduced stats, they have a really big pool of stats to work off of, just thanks to how much base HP that the turtles have. And then I'm not sure if, from what I could tell, the mirrors most likely do activate, like, if you have the lightning effect from the max upgrade turtles, or the fire effect, I'm pretty sure they do help stack those things. or activate those things rather. In the case of fire, you want to stack it, and then in the case of lightning, it's just something that gets hit when, or gets activated when the turtles hit. So either way, having more duplicates is nice, though. This is pretty late to be getting the fire turtle, but it hasn't really mattered. Having this before the boss fight is going to help out a lot, just for some extra damage over time. Honestly, though, even if I wasn't able to get to the fire turtle, like I said before, it's usually not a matter of if you will or won't win the run, it's a matter of will the boss fight take 5 minutes or less. So yeah, you can see that like even the mirror duplicates that are getting spawned are still the same fire turtles. So I'm fairly sure they do apply the burn debuff. And this is where you could maybe throw Phoenix Altars into the build somewhere. They're a ranged unit that gets spawned after you lose a certain amount of units in battle. And then since the mirror units are a lot weaker, they will be dying a lot more often. And then you pretty much just use the Phoenix as it deals a fire attack, so it applies the burn to enemies, and then it has range, so it can just sit behind your turtles and infinitely stack them up. But I don't think it's really necessary to run them. I should have picked up that other lightning shield. I just didn't see it in time. So I could play more turtles and get the other two leveled up, but again, I just don't think it's really worth it at this point. Even though I'm getting more crystals stacked up than I really have anything to do with them, but it's better to have more stacked up and not need them than not have crystals when the boss fight rolls over, if I just happen to get, like, really badly screwed over by my starting hand. I haven't really messed around with the meteor towers too much, but they might be okay to throw in with the build once you've gotten things kind of set up. Also, in terms of stacking up additional crystals, there is still a relic I could see that if I do have a big pool of crystals stacked up, I will be able to spend them all in a single turn, which might really come in handy for the last area, even though, again, it's not something I think I would really even need. I will still spend mana on Resonance, since Resonance helps stack the overall damage of the turtles and their HP. And then this is free, so might as well. You can see that the lightning shield is a full 7,000 shield here. And then on top of that, they're also taking... I guess the shield is just... The shield takes less damage, as if it has, like, defense. That's probably how that one works. I thought it would just double the actual health of the shield, but it doesn't look like that's what it's doing. So since we only have the one fire turtle, the boss fight is still taking a little bit, but it's... never mind. Once everything actually gets onto it, and once the burn gets stacked, it goes down pretty quickly. It's significantly faster than the first boss fight, of course. So now we've gotten a extremely high tier relic for this build. Though honestly, like, you can see that I didn't need it by any means to beat the run. At this point, even if I don't take this relic, I'm really confident that I can beat the final area more than easily enough. But anyways, this makes the buildings that stack your turtle's HP and attack trigger in extra time per turn. So it basically just straight up doubles the effectiveness of them. So now this is probably fine. This starting hand, I'm pretty sure with one turtle, I won't have any issues. Especially since some of these are left over for some reason. I don't feel like that's supposed to be happening. I don't remember it happening on previous runs. But now we're going to do the exact same setup for this last area. Nothing is going to change at all between the gameplay, and the deck shouldn't really change either. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over the deck one last time, and then I'm going to skip ahead to the final round, assuming nothing bad happens along the way, which it shouldn't, unless something really weird happens. So one of the first things I do is aim for having the 5 megaliths. That way I can upgrade the turtles a lot faster and just see them more consistently. It also helps every time you transition over to the start of the next round, just to hopefully have at least one of them in your starting hand. I don't ever really bother with picking up more sunstones or moonstones. You maybe could. I don't think it really matters too much either way. Instead of picking up more of those, I aim for getting the wishing instead because it's cheaper, and then it scales well with Wizard's Tome or other relics that can reduce spell cost. There's a relic that makes it where the first spell card you play has -2 cost, so you can get these for free. And then somewhere along the way, I want to pick up a couple of healing totems and a mirror crystal or 2. And then you can pick up an extra bombard if you see it early on. Bombards are really good for stalling out the waves, especially early on. And then basically, it doesn't matter too much which one you pick between Lightning Tower and Fire Tower. You can pick up a couple of those extra early on to help out with the early game. You could even get rid of them later. And then if you have a lot of extra crystals saved up through some of your relics, or you have a relic like Wizard's Tome, picking up Lightning Shield is a good idea. Lightning Shield is honestly good even without that by the later parts of the run, like by stage 2, since your turtles have so much HP to begin with. And then you could get rid of the Wisdom cards if you wanted. You could not get rid of them. That's maybe up to preference. I don't really tend to use them too often, but in this case I kept them in just for Wizard's Tome. And then if you want to pick up a couple of magic crystals, it's not a bad option either, in my opinion. So your deck doesn't need to look exactly the same as mine. There could be some minor changes, but as long as you get the concept of getting your turtle leveled up quickly in the first area, while also getting a couple of the stacking stuff down, and then using stuff like Bombard Towers to stall out the first area, and use some of the other Lightning or Fire Towers for damage, you'll probably be okay in most runs, as long as you can make it past the first area. That's usually the time where the turtle build really struggles with. If you can get it scaling, then it's pretty much unstoppable after that. The only time I've lost a run after having it scaled is just from not having enough units out and having them bypass and go straight to the angel statue, or goddess statue. So anyways, I'll skip to the final fight, and then we'll end out the video. There's really no point in showing off this entire area, because it's going to be literally the exact same thing as what I did in Area 2. Alright, we are right back outside of the final boss wave. And it's basically the exact same setup I had before, just with more mirror crystals this time. I have one fire turtle fully upgraded in the middle, and then the other 2 are more so for distractions. Depending on like your crystal count and other stuff, you can get up to the point of where you have more than one fire turtle by the end, but it's better to just fully max out one and then have at least one of the other two just kind of on standby. Do not mind my crystal counts, or my crystal card counts right now. I took Lollipop, and then I think something with Blueprint is really fucked up right now. Because as soon as I play my first card, my other cards spike really heavily in cost. But luckily I took this, like, right before it was probably here, if I had to guess. I took it recently, and it luckily did not ruin my run for me. So one thing I did want to show off here is that I'm going to fully upgrade the Lightning Tower, and then I think I talked about this at some point, but I never actually got a fully upgraded Lightning Tower. You can get an upgrade where it applies Flame Ignite damage, which just stacks up over time and deals more damage the more Ignite stacks are on it. So if you can get a fully upgraded Lightning Tower, they're pretty nice to have. And then I didn't even really bother putting down the bombardment towers anymore for this area. The turtles are so obscenely tanky that nothing's going to get past them anyways, and they're going to have so many extra duplicates thanks to these mirror crystals. So as just like a final count, the turtles ended up being 15,240 HP, and then they have almost 1,900 attack damage. I doubt that's, like, optimal. I'm sure you could get even higher, especially if you managed to get, like, Hourglass earlier on, but this is more than enough to beat any run that I've played so far. And you can see that now, the boss doesn't even get to survive. The final boss lasted significantly less time than any other boss, just because of how stacked up I was, and having some of that flame stacking, I think, helps a lot too. You can see that basically all of the damage of the run comes from just the tortoise, and then all the tanking as well. The little tortoises are the things that the bombardment towers throw out. Very useful early on, not as needed later on, though. And then the goddess statue does pretty decent damage over the full course of the run. It's nothing too crazy, so if you see the horn later on, you can skip it. But if you pick it up early in the run, it will make the first area much more safe and consistent. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the game, and I'll probably show it off some more in the future. I think it's got a really good baseline for a deck builder roguelike wave defense game. It's just that it needs more cards and more relics and stuff to kind of flesh out things. That way you have a little bit more variety during runs, and you're not just running the same meta build every time. But I think it's a good enough game to play even just now, and it will be much better if they keep adding things to it. Anyways, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.